Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
James Franklin is keeping Virginia Tech football busy on the practice field, and Mike Young's roster is going to need a reload on the basketball court. Spring sports updates are here on episode 479 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. We're recording on Wednesday, April 1st, 2026 from the Tech Solutions studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. But don't worry, this episode is indeed real. Today's episode is brought to you by Rich Web. And so if you're watching the show on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Riley Klaus, and today I'm joined to my left by lead analyst and columnist Chris Coleman. Across the way, our managing editor, David Cunningham, and to my right, senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. Producing the show behind the scenes, as always, is Mr. Nick Brown. Now, it's been a little bit since we've had a podcast, and so we're going to start with football, but back up to the pro day for Virginia Tech football, where they had 11 players who played on the team last year, and Kyle Fuller was there as well. Were there any players that stood out trying to boost their stock?
I don't know if there were any standouts. They go through these pro days. I don't know if it changes a whole lot. They go out there on the field and they lift weights and stuff like that. And, you don't go to a weightlifting competition when you're at the NFL. Like, it's how you play football. Like, these guys are going to look at tape. And I think the big benefit of pro days is having scouts there to be able to see you in person and put you through individual drills, kind of see how you move, things like that. And more on top of that, it's like the combine where you get to talk to these guys. You get to get a sense of what they're like. So, some guys did well. I think Jaden Keller tested out pretty well, just his 40-time leaping ability. Kelvin Gilliam had 34 reps on the bench. Chris can do that, 225 on the bench. I can't come close to that. Maybe that's 25. Pretty impressive. I looked at historically. I think that's would have been the second highest total at the combine over the last 5 or 6 years by a defensive tackle. So pretty good numbers there. But ultimately this comes down to how guys play football. And I think, looking at this crop of players, I don't know if anybody's going to get drafted out of this group. Maybe Gilliam in
that
there.
Would be late.
Yeah.
Maybe a 6th or 7th
round.
Maybe.
I mean, Keller physically looked great and everything. He's looked great his entire career, though. How do you play football? Is he going to go out there and be able to handle stuff? Interestingly, with him, they had him working at defensive back, linebacker, and as an edge rusher.
I would play him as an outside linebacker, edge rusher, where he doesn't have to navigate the traffic inside the tackle box, which he never was able to figure that out. Like, his mind was always tying up his feet. But if you give him a little bit of freedom where he doesn't have to think so much, and there's not a car crash on two sides of him, I think he could be a more effective player. So maybe there's a chance, because he is a really good athlete. And he's a pretty smart guy. Everything from what I understand, it's just that inside linebacker. He never really played defense in high school. Like, you go back and watch his high school highlights, it was all offense. There was like 2 defensive plays on the whole highlight tape. So sometimes that works out. Like, Caleb Farley never played defense in high school, but corner's a much easier position to play from a mental standpoint. So yeah, I would play him at that edge role, or at least try to.
Yeah, but Gilliam maybe is a late round guy. I don't think Kyron Drones will get drafted as a quarterback. We'll see if he can continue playing somewhere or can latch on with a roster, or even if it's not the NFL, could you get CFL or Arena League, the UFL. There are other leagues out there to continue playing. I think accuracy is going to be a big thing with him. Can he improve that? Never really took that step forward in college in that terms, but I think it'll be a pretty light year this year in terms of draft guys for the Hokies.
Maybe special teams. We'll see. It's always
they those don't draft special teams. Like Veltzistis, he's going to do a local pro day or local thing with the Commanders, because he's from up around there. So he'll go to some local event with that. He actually had some nice kicks. He bounced a few off the rafters in the indoor facility, and it's like, oh man, that was one of his best kicks. You don't even get to see where it ends up because he hit the ceiling on that. But he was talking about how he was going to do it. Do you punt outside ahead of time? Peter Moore did that last year, and there was just nobody there watching him. So he's like, I'm going to do it inside, kind of in between when they're setting up these different events, and hopefully some scouts sit there and watch it because, for the most part, scouts don't really care that much about the kickers when they're in this, and that's a tough spot to latch on because those guys get that job, they hold it for 20 years.
It's like a baseball announcer,
right? Exactly.
Like Bob Uecker was never coming off that job with the Brewers, right?
Right. So the opportunities are very limited for the specialists, and certainly you really don't see a lot of those guys get drafted.
Yeah, I think the interesting one is Remack for me. Like, he's a guy who played really, really well at West Virginia, and last year's Virginia Tech offensive line was bad. It feels like the talent might be there. Like, he was one of the highest grading offensive guards, I believe.
He was the highest grading offensive guard in the Big 12, and then he came to Virginia Tech,
and then regressed.
To be fair, there's how did the players around you perform?
Yeah,
right.
And he had to play so many different positions. He played everything but center last year, basically.
Yeah. So I wonder if maybe he has a shot. Somebody takes a shot on him given his past performances and just kind of says, "Oh, that was just a 1-year thing." Well,
you always see these NFL guys discovering college players all of a sudden. They're like, "Whoa, Terrion Stewart, 5'5", 230." He's like, "What, man? That guy's just like a load there to take down." I was like, "Yeah, but he's got to stay healthy." That was always his problem in college. So you never know. It's interesting to see if these guys will latch on somewhere, and it's always interesting to go to pro day. And their parents was talking with Isaiah Cash's mom. They had driven up from Texas to see him there. She was there wearing a Isaiah Cash jersey at the pro day, and she's a listener of the podcast, or has listened to the podcast in the past. So you always kind of root for these guys to do well once they move on to their pro careers, but man, it's tough. It is dog eat dog in the NFL, and roster spots are limited, and it's tough to make it.
I think it's funny seeing all the tweets about Terrion Stewart yesterday. Like, it's like people were just like, "Oh my gosh, this guy has the highest forced missed tackle rate in college football history. Where did that come from?" Like, we were writing about that last year when he signed.
It's also interesting
Welcome
to see
the party.
It's also interesting his real height. Right. They measure his 5'5". It's like, that's about right. Because I think they listed him at 5'9" or something like that. It's like, that was a complete lie the entire time. We called that out once we were at pro day last year. It's like, I saw him standing next to Chris, and he's not 5'8" or 5'9".
I think they measured his width.
They might have, yeah.
Wasn't it Isaiah Cash who had that awesome interception against Louisville this past year?
Louisville gave them early momentum in that game, and things looked pretty good with that.
I think that was like the most impressive individual defensive play Virginia Tech made.
And he was a guy who played, I think I'm trying to remember, had he played nickel before doing it last year? I don't think he did. So they kind of put him in some positions that he was not used to over his career. I think maybe out of necessity in some situations. So again, maybe you get that out of that, and you see the physical skills that could show up, and you get in a certain situation with an NFL team that just clicks. You never know. Sometimes it really works, and you see guys. I mean, how many guys carved out really long careers in the NFL that you didn't think? Yeah, Nick Sorensen, I think, is a good one, but special teams guy and made his mark, and now a coach in the NFL that's doing quite well. You never know. Sometimes you just find the right situation.
And it was interesting to see a lot of faces come back to campus. I mentioned Kyle Fuller trying to make a comeback, but even the receivers for Kyron Drones, Ollie Jennings, ended up coming back as they tried to get him different players to throw to.
Yeah, and I think he was kind of scrambling for guys because I think some receivers fell through either because of injuries. He hit up his cousin Cam Ward, who got a guy that had played with him at Incarnate Word and Washington State. And I think he finished up his career in Nevada and then flew a red eye from Reno to come in and catch passes for him in front of NFL scouts. Ollie Jennings. I asked Kyron afterwards. I'm like, kind of like old times. Like, well, actually, we didn't actually play together that much.
That's right.
They had one touchdown connection their entire time here. Do you know what it was?
The Vanderbilt game.
The 62-yarder,
which took the lead.
Yeah. That was the only touchdown pass that they threw to each other because Ali missed basically all of the 23 season.
Right.
And then got hurt early in the 24 season. Then Kyron got hurt by the end of the season when Ali came back.
So 23, he got hurt in the Purdue game. Ali got hurt in the Purdue game in the first half. And then Drones comes in late in that game after Grant Wells gets hurt.
They just ships passing in the night just kind of missed each other. Yeah.
So those were some former Hokies playing out there. And so let's talk about the current ones as we shift to some takeaways from recent practices. Starting off the bat, James Franklin talking about some players. He seems pretty impressed with Troy Hune as of late.
Yeah, he had a great scrimmage from the sounds of it. Really high completion
18 for
percentage.
20?
18 of 20.
4 touchdowns, had a pick.
One of those, just so only one of his passes hit the ground in the scrimmage.
Yeah, but he was not live.
It was not live still.
And probably
to go
against
out there.
backups.
I mean, the other guys were probably not live too. Did they have those
Yes,
kind of numbers?
exactly.
Not clear. We didn't get a full run. I wish they just give us stats from the. I think one place Auburn might have given stats from like scrimmages or something like that. So you get it. It's like, do I trust these stats or how did they set this scrimmage up? Pretty impressive. And I've seen him out there. He's a good sized guy. He can move. It looks like he has a good arm. I think a very bright future there. I don't know if that necessarily means he factors in this year. You look at the guys they have, and Grunkemeyer and Baker, and we'll talk about those guys. I think those are the top two, but they've already moved AJ Brand to another position. Keldon Ryan has been here. It wouldn't shock me if Hune's the number 3 guy coming out of this competition, and pretty bright future for him, I would say.
I was walking to the first press conference of the spring, and was talking to somebody who works in the athletic department, and a guy, he asked me, "What do you think about Hune?" I said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "I heard he's QB3 already." It's basically what this guy in the athletic department told me. And just based on watching him throw the little bit we've seen, I would be surprised. Like if Virginia Tech had to play a third quarterback this year and they felt like they could win the game, then it would probably be him. And I think Keldon Ryan's actually a pretty good player. I just think there's a pretty talented player. I don't know that he would do well in a game this early in his career, and I don't know that Hune would either. But I think there's more talent in that room. Now we have to remember, talent is different than depth. And somebody pointed this out on our boards today, and they're absolutely right. We don't know that Virginia Tech is deep yet. Only one of these guys has ever played in a college football game, and only one of them is older than a freshman. So, like, if something happened to Grunkemeyer, who we assume is going to start, is a redshirt freshman, is Bryce Baker ready to win a football game for Virginia Tech? Like, would Troy Hune, as a true freshman, be ready to win a football game for Virginia Tech?
We just don't know.
How many freshmen get thrown into the fire and are really good right away? Like, it took Grunkemeyer 4 or 5 weeks before he really started putting up big numbers. Now, he
To be
played some
fair,
great
he opened
defenses.
up with Iowa, Ohio State, Indiana.
That's pretty
all
rough.
top 10 defenses.
Yep,
Here you go.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, your coach just got fired too.
Oh, yeah.
Manage that whole situation.
right.
That's pretty.
That's right.
That's pretty rough one to
It
start.
was. But so I wouldn't say Tech's quarterback room is necessarily deep, but I do think it's very talented. Very talented. It's just from a pure arm talent standpoint. It's more talented than I think it's ever been.
I was gonna say most talented quarterback room since
2019. So you had Ryan Willis started at the beginning of the season, eventually got benched for Hendon Hooker. But Ryan Willis, the next year, at one point, was on the Chicago Bears active roster during the regular season. Talented player. And then Hendon Hooker was a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah.
So I would have to say that.
I was wondering if like 2016 maybe, where you have Gerard and Brendan Motley was serviceable as a backup.
Right.
But then you have Josh Jackson on that. I don't think was Hendon on
No,
that.
wasn't there
He was
yet.
the next year.
Yeah,
okay.
He redshirted in 2017.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe that eliminates
Yeah,
that.
and Jackson
year.
was redshirted in 2016.
But then if you're trying to think of a time before that, it's probably 2010. Tyrod senior season, Logan Thomas in the wings.
right.
Because Logan never really had a backup that was like
No. Right.
capable of going in there.
You had Tyrod and Glennon at one point.
Yeah, but that was before that.
That was
so
before
I
that.
think, Tyrod's senior year, obviously he's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Logan who took over and, was pretty good. Pretty good in his first year. I mean, that year in 2010, he actually caught a touchdown pass, didn't he?
He did against Wake Forest in
That's
the corner.
right. So,
He didn't have gloves. Remember, he wasn't wearing gloves. Like, he didn't have gloves, so they just threw him in there to catch a
that was the
pass.
seedlings of his NFL career as a
Indeed.
tight end. What could have been if they could have found other quarterbacks to come in here and play.
As far as natural passers go,
Well, yeah.
like guys who, as Brent Pry talked about, you design a defense and you design it a certain way in your zone coverage where there's always going to be a hole in a zone somewhere, but 75% of college quarterbacks actually can't put the ball into that window. And this group has the arm talent to do it.
Well-
So I think from a pure arm talent, natural passing standpoint, I don't know that Tech has had a better group.
Well, that was the thing for the longest time is they had incredible athletes playing quarterback. You know, Vic had a very high completion percentage in his career or QB rating, but he wasn't like a specifically accurate passer, I think. Brian Randall, I think Bud Foster told the story. He's like, he showed up and like he couldn't throw a ball from like here to there without bouncing it. By the time he was a senior, he was a very effective player. Tyrod became an effective player early on. He was kind of getting by on athleticism and scoring touchdowns. Logan was never an especially accurate passer. I think that showed up over his career. So yeah, maybe this is the point where these guys are really accurate. I mean, I think Hendon had a lot of accuracy in his game early on in his career. A lot of that was because they managed it that way, and he was throwing a lot of screens and very safe passes. Clearly, in his career, he became a highly effective passer in that Tennessee offense, not here. But yeah, I'm trying to think of just as a collection, as a group, guys that were just really highly accurate passers.
A bunch of pro style passers and one team. No, Tech has never had that.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about, I think you talked about like the ability to make all the throws, and that's what Pry talked about. Like Pry said, these quarterbacks can make all the throws. Yep. But I also think there's like the mental aspect of like actually understanding, like recognizing, oh, hey, they're in cover 3. Like what the defense is in, where the hole is going to be. You have to make the read. You have to process it. And I think
you have to have, your timing has to be great.
Correct. And I think the fact that you're seeing that from Troy Hune as a true freshman, I mean, even if he's wearing an orange penny and the defense isn't allowed to touch him, it's still impressive that he's able to kind of zip throws in there. And we obviously don't know what all 20 of those passes were, but assuming most of them are, going past the line of scrimmage and they're not screens, it's like that's a pretty impressive mark from a true freshman.
I think it's impressive no matter what. Like it also shows that nobody dropped any passes. Unless the one pass that hit the ground was dropped, then nobody dropped any passes, which is a big step forward from last season.
I thought, talking to Isaiah Brown Murray for a while yesterday after practice, and he made the point that like he's playing primarily nickel now, and he was going up against Brown and Heath in the slot, and he said those guys basically caught everything the other day, which I think that's a big improvement, I think, for a guy like Heath, who, if you recall, dropped a lot of passes that hit him in the hands last year. If it's a two-way street, the quarterback's got to get him the ball in the right spots, but the receivers also have to haul it in, and I think that's what you saw with Brown, last year at Duke. If he's setting the tone this year of just catching everything, that's a good step in the right direction for that wide receiver room.
And it might signal sort of a change in offensive philosophy. It's like, for how long has Virginia Tech just been like dual threat type quarterbacks, and maybe too much dual threat where they relied on the quarterback and just put it on Gerard Evans's shoulders to carry it 200 times in a season, or how many times did Kyron Drones take hits in the open field? Braxton Burmeister ran a lot when he was here, and he didn't have the size to take that kind of punishment, and that caught up to that team. I don't think, looking at this quarterback crew, you're going to have somebody that's going to rush for 600 yards or something like that, or 10 touchdowns like they have in the past. But maybe the trade-off is that they're a little bit better passing.
Yeah, and I would even argue it sometimes that Virginia Tech, like Drones was not an advanced passer. Like most of the yards he got, especially his best year in 2023, was off plays that looked like they were going to be running plays, and then the receivers just running wide open. So was he really dual threat? Like, did Tech really have a real passing game? Could they really drop back and throw a pass that wasn't like a trick, some sort of a trickeration type play? And they couldn't really do that on a consistent basis. So I don't even know if I would say Drones would be a dual threat. I mean, I understand. I mean, I know everybody throws that term out there.
Everybody throws it out there because they make an assumption about the passing side of it.
Right. Well, he could throw, but there's a difference between throwing
Lynn
and
Bowden
passing.
was not a dual threat. He was a single threat and still beat them in that belt bowl.
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Well, let's keep the hype train going a little bit at the running back spot, where it seems like Jeff Overton is taking advantage of a room that's maybe not 100% healthy right now.
I mean, somebody's got to get reps. why not overtime? I thought it was surprising. Franklin talking about his size. And, played like 185 last year, and he's talking about him up around 205 or wanting to
He's
get
listed at 205 now.
He said he's got a chance to be around 210 next year.
That's quite I don't know, call it improvement, but quite a transformation in size, getting bigger like that. You hope that he can keep that speed with it, because I think that was what made him special last year, was that vision and speed and breaking away for a touchdown. They didn't have a lot of those last year on the ground. So will be interesting to see how he develops just physically in addition to mentally and taking more reps. But now's the time. I mean, Marcellus Hawkins is still working his way back. They haven't been overly complimentary of Bill Davis.
Right.
So I feel like, Franklin kind of mentioned his weight the first time, and then this time he's talking about how he's still coming along and trying to fit in. Mickens is not practicing right now. So without all those guys there, this is time to shine for Overton. It sounds like he's taking advantage.
Absolutely. I think Hawkins is fine. Like, there's not a major injury. He's still out there running on the side and looks like he's
doing
running at
individual
full speed.
stuff.
Yeah. So he's going to be fine. No worries about that. But there's no question in my mind that him and Overton are going to be the top two backs this year. I think Bill Davis is there. He's going to be a big body. He can push the pile on third down, but I don't think he provides the balance and the big playability. I know that they've said he's timed pretty well in the past, but it didn't really stand out to me on film when he did it. The biggest thing I've seen is I've probably watched individual running back drills more than I have anything else, just because I really like Norval McKenzie's coaching style. It's not family-friendly coaching style, but I enjoy watching it. It's entertaining.
Boxing glove on a stick.
Yeah, it's
The Shane Beamer Memorial boxing glove on a stick.
And it's not just one.
They have
glove on a stick.
multiple, yeah.
And coming from different angles, man. If you haven't fumbled this spring, then that would probably put you the number one running back, because those
It
guys
looks
are
like
getting
they've
attacked.
perfected the technology on that now, because those things are on there solidly. I remember Shane had those jury were duct taped up
fall
and
off.
yeah, it was
But
pretty,
they're specially made now.
Yeah.
But I think Davis has struggled a little bit with footwork and conditioning. And I think there were I didn't check yesterday, but last week they only had 4 running backs going through the drills. Like, Darius Taylor wasn't with the running backs anymore. I don't know where he is, but they run the running back drills really quick. There's no break in between them. So after the first couple minutes, you're sucking wind. And that's when the guys have started fumbling and things like that. So I think Davis, with his weight, is going to naturally struggle in drills like that.
I think the running back, that will be the biggest challenge in putting on an actual spring game. With competitive teams, if you want to split it up into 2 teams, they haven't set a format or anything like that. So,
but they're gonna make it competitive. I think
it might come down to offense versus defense, though. Just if you don't have enough guys to play running back on both sides, and then on top of that, you don't want to have your running back get 20 carries in the spring game. That's why you always see more passing, because you don't want to have any kind of injuries.
Oh, there's going to be a bunch of passing in the spring game. I guarantee you. If you like to see the ball thrown around, you come to the spring game this year, assuming it's decent weather.
And a lot of
the next 15 days, really good weather in Blacksburg, so hopefully it carries over.
That means nothing.
It doesn't mean anything. You're right.
It
It might
turn on a dime.
Not only will you probably see a lot of passes, you probably will see a lot of completed passes.
Yeah.
The thing about Overton, I think his injury recovery and the fact that he was able to get back into such game shape and have such an impact at the end of the year. He had 3 plays, 1 catch, and 2 rushes of 30+ yards in the final 4 games of the year, and he was still able to redshirt, show off a little bit of what he was able to do. Franklin talked about the hype around him coming in, and it's like Andy said, somebody's got to step up in this room right now when everybody else is banged up, and it's like, you feel like he's an impact guy and can be an impact guy for years to come. And if he continues to get his body right, coming off an injury, you see the impact he's made. Now if he can, go from 185 to 205 to 210, if he can get his body right, I think he can be a force. He's still a redshirt freshman. You've got him for multiple years. I think that's huge.
Yeah, and what it tells me, to put on that amount of weight in a short amount of time, that's not just weight room stuff. That is, he's taking his mass gainer. I remember when I was at the height of working with my personal trainer, he was basically like, you can probably add a half a pound of muscle a week, right? So when you see these people say, oh, well, he put on 20 pounds of muscle in the offseason. No, he didn't. Like that's impossible unless you're on steroids. So you do a mass gainer, and a mass gainer isn't muscle. It's what it is. It's just, it adds mass. When Virginia Tech was going through the skinny leg syndrome back about 5 years ago, I decided, well, I want to see what somebody my age can do if they get on a mass gainer, which is what I think the Tech players were lacking at the time. I've heard at the time they basically weren't taking their protein shakes after workout drills, and nobody was making them, right? So I'm like, okay, I'll get on a mass gainer and see what happens. And within 6 weeks, I had added like 12 pounds, and it was good weight. Like, it wasn't fat. I was more muscular, but I just added mass. I was just a bigger dude. And seeing guys like Overton put on that good solid weight now shows me that those guys are being held accountable in what they're doing off the field these days as far as taking care of their bodies and making improvements there.
Whatever. I mass gainer. I gained 20 pounds in the offseason without that. I guess I'm just built different in this situation. But yeah, 20-pound gain in the offseason, no problem.
That's preparing for softball this summer, right?
I don't know about that.
Well, see, I'm more likely
I got to stay
weight.
limber to play shortstop.
I'm more likely to gain weight during the season with all the tailgating. So I'm like the direct opposite.
Well, let's switch to the defensive end up front, where it seems like the defensive ends might be the most competitive group, and the defensive tackles are still developing a little bit, apparently.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to hear that, because
when I
look at the line, I'd feel more comfortable about the tackles just because Kamari's there. He gives you a sure thing, and I look at the ends and I go, who's the sure thing of the ends? And Pry loves him some Mason Stevens. Man, he brings him up all the time. This thing, and I think Hilson has a high, potential out there. To be honest, I didn't have a chance to go over to get to see the defense the other day. They make it tougher now. We have to be on the outside of the field, so you kind of have to choose one field and stay at it. Otherwise, you're walking the whole time to get to the other side, and you don't see anything. So I didn't have a chance to see the defense the other day, but Pry saying the ends. He feels a little bit better about the ends development right now in the tackles. I thought that surprised me.
I think some of this is maybe a little bit Copeland's fault, right? There's less competition at tackle because it's really hard for anybody to be like Kamari Copeland's probably your best football player, right?
On the team.
Probably. So I think it's a little bit harder for everybody to be competitive with him. Where all those ends have never, thus far in their careers, none of them has performed at more than an average level. So you've got more guys that are on the same level of each other at end, which makes that competition a little more active, I would say. Would
you call him the bell cow?
The bell cow.
Should we bring that back?
Yeah, maybe.
That was Ricky Walker, the bell cow.
The bell cow, yeah.
They gave him that nickname, and he felt like he was the only tackle for a while there.
Yeah, for sure.
After Settle and Woody Barron cycled through the program there. He was like the guy holding down the middle. So maybe sort of a similar situation with Kamari.
So what would you think the defensive tackle depth chart would be? I mean, Kamari, Emmett Laws, Fall. Who's the fourth guy?
Yeah, then
those are the top three, and then like...
Does
Mensa get in there?
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up. I'm
State,
still learning the roster,
exactly.
if I'm being honest.
Well, I think that was Pry's point. I mean, he said we're probably not as far along as we are at end. There's candidates there. There's size. There's strength. We're just not getting as much production out of those guys because you know what you have in Fall, and Laws has been in the program for a couple years, but it's Copeland and then those two guys, and then I think it's just kind of anybody's guess.
Handchuck, could he get in there?
If he can stay healthy, maybe.
Christian Evans, is he inside?
Yes, he is. The transfer from Penn State, the redshirt freshman, I like his long-term future.
It's like Adarica,
I think.
Adarica, yeah. But I think you look at
T-Ron, another guy coming in.
True freshman, yeah.
Well, yeah, and then I look at end, and it's like Stevens, Jason Abbey, Derek Dandy. Those are all guys who have been in the program. Same with Brett Clatterball. Like, this is his second season. And then you add Hilson from Mizzou and Cortez Harris from Penn State. And it's like, okay,
you got Okunlola out there too.
Yeah.
Which, has he been out there? I
don't know.
I didn't get over to the defensive side.
When we had the weight room session, we saw him. He was in there then. But I haven't. Gosh, we had that whole first practice where we could watch the whole practice, but ever since then, you go in there and basically it's like, I'm going to watch the running backs for a few minutes, and then I'm just going to go watch our quarterbacks throw because that's entertaining, right?
Well, and yesterday Scott Loeffler was out there, so I was catching up with
talking to
Lefty on
him.
that whole thing. It was fun.
He likes Gronkmeyer.
He does.
So
Yeah. It's probably a good sign.
Yep.
But I think those six defensive ends, like very much on the same level.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, and all these guys have been in either this program. I mean, Hilson's the one guy who has not been either at Virginia Tech or at Penn State in the last year of that six, because Harris was just with Franklin, right? So it's like we've got guys who are familiar with what we want to do, and they're all kind of on the same level. It's like that's competitive, whereas defensive tackle, it's kind of like 1, 2, 3, whoop. And so,
and you need 5,
Yeah.
at least,
Yeah.
just to feel comfortable about the depth. Somebody always gets hurt on the inside, or even if they're not like out, they're slowed. They're not as fast as they were because they're nicked up in some way. So, work to do on the D line, and it'll be interesting to see how that emerges here.
I think some people are probably maybe sleeping on Derek Dandy a little bit at end. I watched him in the spring game last year, and I know people always equate change of direction to running backs and wide receivers, but I watched him in that game, and he would come off the edge, and he could just change the direction of his body very quickly towards the ball carrier. So I think he's a guy that people are sleeping on a little bit, and I think he's going to play a lot this year.
well, I think the interesting thing is with Stevens, like we saw Stevens a little bit, but we haven't. Him, Abby, Dandy, like they've been in the program for a couple of years, but we haven't really seen them because they were behind like APR.
Right.
Like we've seen them in doses, but haven't really seen them full-fledged. They're playing 30, 40 snaps a game per se.
We've seen 15 to 20.
Yeah, and like I think Stevens has flashed more than anybody. You know, he's gotten like a TFL or two here and there.
But which is something he's never been play in the backfield type of player before when he's been in there. So if he's doing that now, that's Coach Chaos coming into play.
Yeah.
Didn't he have a play at Stanford?
Yeah,
a couple years
I think
ago.
that was the TF.
That was one of his first like games where he kind of showed up.
Yeah.
That you noticed him in that.
Yeah.
Well, let's close this discussion with one more spot on the defensive side, which has been the cornerback room achieving what they were hoping. So
I think they really like the cornerbacks.
I think they have depth. I mean, last year they were playing guys out of necessity, and I think IBM and Thomas Williams developed over the year, and IBM turned in a pretty good year. Williams had some shaky moments throughout that. I think he got better, but now you add Jaquez White into that. I think he'll be a starter.
Yep.
Cam Chadwick, who Pry said has been better than they thought when they brought him in here. You've got Josh Clark back from an injury last season, in addition to IBM and Thomas Williams. Then you got Amari Polidor, who apparently keeps making plays.
So I think he got the interception that Hune threw because I was watching their social media stuff. And
Apparently it was a pick six.
Right. I saw number 18. Who's that? And I'm looking at wide receivers. I'm like, oh, wait, that's defense. So, yeah, Polidor's been my guy from the very beginning.
Well, what did Pry say about him? He's like, sometimes you're like yelling at him, and then
he's
makes
making
plays.
some plays that we want to pull our hair out, but he's making some plays that we're jumping up and down because he gets to the football and he gets around the ball.
Yeah, and then he shouted out Kenny Woosley, too,
did.
as a guy who's played nickel and cornerback. So you have all those. I mean, think about last year, and we were talking about, JoJo Krim, Jamari Deloach, Knowledge Harrell all playing like roles as cornerbacks as
and
true
now Harrell's a
freshmen.
safety.
Yeah, and now Krim is out in the spring, correct? Haven't heard a lot about Deloach here, but it doesn't seem like they're going to be required to play those roles. Maybe it allows them to develop at a more reasonable pace.
You could redshirt Harrell this year.
Yeah, it's one of those sophomore
Or
redshirts.
Krim.
It happens,
Right. It does.
Yeah.
I think just depth wise, it feels like they have more possible contributors back there. Now let's see who stays healthy until the season. But last year, I think they were just kind of playing out of necessity, and this year they have some options.
And cornerback is a position you don't have to rotate quite as much because it's a little bit less physical. Some of it depends on what type of offense you're playing. Like if the other team's throwing deep a lot and you're running a lot, then you want to rotate a little more. But if it's more traditional offense, you don't have to rotate as much. But with all those guys in there, like there's going to be one or two cornerbacks that by the end of the season aren't happy with their playing time. But that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I think when you talk about adding competition to a room, Tech's cornerback room this year kind of personifies that. Like there's nobody in there that has a chance to play who I would consider to be a bad option.
Well, look at last year's group, how it got dwindled.
Oh.
And you lose Clark in the spring.
And Caleb
You lose
Brown.
Caleb Brown early in the season.
Back in Hawaii.
Dante Lovett transfers after Pry gets fired. I mean, that's 3 guys and contributors that you were expecting all season. So, of course, they were going to be shorthanded last year. And you want to have a little bit of a buffer going into a season. I think they found that.
Well, and you add safeties into it too. Ellis Lee transfers out, and Quentin
Makes
Red,
the play of the game and then transfers right after that.
yeah,
You're
against NC State.
To a rival.
Yeah.
And then
Fascinating.
But Quentin Reddish, who Price said is his number one option at safety right now, Reddish was out all year.
Right.
He's still not back full.
Yeah, but
he's
I did,
practicing.
But it's like that whole secondary was just torched.
Oh,
like
yeah.
with portal entries and injuries last year.
They were going to redshirt Jordan Bass as a linebacker, and they ended up starting him as a safety. That's how ravaged they were by injury.
Yeah.
And then you look at some of the guys they play, like Sherrod Koval came in, never played,
Yeah,
didn't really contribute. So you're playing Sheldon Robinson,
and Johnson.
yeah, and Johnson by the end of the year, true freshman.
Yeah.
No wonder they went 3-9.
Sure.
I mean, you see how it went.
Yeah. They've I mean, Price said they feel really good about IBM and White and Wosley and Chadwick, and those are all guys who have played.
Yeah.
Like between Troy, who Price said White is everything we'd hoped he'd be, Wosley, who came from Penn State, IBM, who obviously has been here, who Price said is the most mature guy in the room, and he's playing primarily nickel right now. It's like, wow, you have in some ways you have experience, depth, and then you can even dig deeper into some of those young guys if you want. Like, that's a good problem to have, whereas like last year it was, okay, Clark, who probably would have started, what Price said that much yesterday. Clark goes down, Brown's out. It's like, we got Lovett. Lovett's the only guy who's played snaps here. We got IBM, but it's like, felt like IBM was on an island a lot last year, just in terms of he's the only guy that has ever played.
Well, they were going to play him at nickel last year.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, well, we don't have any corners, and then they ended up not even really using a nickel very much at all last season.
Well, it's an interesting, like, would you rather go into a season like they did a couple years ago with 2 obvious top guys, Dorian Strong, Mansour Delane? Or would you rather go into a season like this year where I don't think any of these guys are quite on that level, but there's more of them.
right.
And you got past Dorian and Mansour, and you kind of hold your breath.
If
out
you
there.
knew nobody was going to get hurt, then you'd pick
Right,
that.
yeah,
but
that's
you don't
the
know
thing.
that.
Right.
Yeah. I think IBM's a throwback. Like if you stand right next to him, like his frame's really not much any bigger than mine, right? But he's a throwback football player. Like he's like reminds me of a throwback '90s Virginia Tech football player. He's not gonna like wow you like NFL combine type stuff, but he's tough and he works really, really hard. And he's got a lot of drive and he's got versatility. So he's kind of a throwback player for Virginia Tech. And again, he did a good job for the Hokies last year, and it'll be a different role for him this year. But I think he can handle that nickel role.
What Price said about IBM was good skill set. When you couple that with his instincts and his experience and his savviness, you get a good player.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of just personifies it.
Well, as we alluded to earlier, you can catch the Hokies in action on Saturday, April 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern for the spring game. We're going to talk some news on the transfer portal surrounding basketball, but first, a word from our sponsor today, Rich Webb.
This episode of the Tech Sideline podcast is brought to you by Rich Webb, your local provider of top-tier IT managed services. For 30 years, Rich Webb has offered a comprehensive suite of cutting-edge solutions tailored to empower businesses of all sizes in today's digital age. From top-tier network engineering services, ensuring seamless connectivity and security, to our exceptional managed endpoint and cloud services, providing proactive maintenance and strategic optimization, we're dedicated to delivering excellence at every turn. Rich Webb, driving enterprise IT. Visit richweb.com to learn more. Rich Webb has proudly hosted TechSideline.com for over 2 decades.
All right, well, now let's carry the conversation to the hardwood, where since the last podcast, there's been a lot of news in the transfer portal, and so let's talk extensively Neo Avdalis has hit the transfer portal for men's basketball. And so when it's all said and done, what didn't quite go right in this equation?
Oh man. Well,
How much time do you have?
let's start with this. Chris, you and I both sat here in the off season last year, and you wrote that it was a risk worth taking. And I think both of us still believe that when you have the opportunity to go try to get a player of that caliber, it's worth it. And it just didn't pan out. I mean, you saw him, he came in, Providence, second game of the year, he drops 33. And I think that kind of set everyone's expectations in a certain light. And he is not really a scorer. He only had 4 games of 20 or more points this year. One of them was that game, and then he broke 30 another time against like Western Carolina. He played well until the Bahamas, where he got injured, and then that nagging injury stayed with him. He never really got healthy again until like late January, early February. He was ice cold in January, and I think you saw Tech in January when he was cold and Ben Hammond was hot. You shifted from trying to play up tempo and run things in favor of kind of Neo's skill set a little bit to, hey, we've got to do what's best for the program. And the guy who's taking the most shots right now, the guy who has the ball in his hands the most, he has not been as effective as we hoped. And I think it says a lot that by the end of this season, there were a couple different games, the Miami game, the Wake Forest game at the end of the season. He was not on the floor at the end of the game when it mattered. He did not play the final 12 and a half minutes of the Hokies season. And it got to the point where it's just, it sucks, but it's better for, it just better to part ways. And Tech also does not really have the money that he was asking for to keep him around. So it stinks because he played it a big factor in just how disappointing of a year it was and the expectations, but just didn't really go the way they originally thought it was.
If you're going to pay a guy what I imagine they paid him, he's got to be a star.
Right.
For a school like Tech.
Sure.
I think if you go to like Kentucky or something like that, you can get paid that and be a 6th, 7th guy. And, people won't bat an eye at that.
Right.
But a place like Virginia Tech, that guy has to be a star.
And
here.
a good one.
Yeah, and it just wasn't the case.
Right. It just wasn't the case. And I think maybe there was a little bit force feeding him into the point guard role early. And that's the role he wanted to play. He sees himself as a point guard, but he's probably not. But I think that's one of the things, like you don't get him if you're Virginia Tech unless you let him play point guard. Right?
Unless you promise him a lot of stuff like that.
So I think we've talked about this before. Virginia Tech's always been a program historically in basketball, not so great. And only 13 NCAA appearances all time and have only made it past the first weekend once. I think this is a program that to succeed in basketball, you have to take risks sometimes. Sometimes those risks will work out. Sometimes they won't. Buzz Williams was a risk. All right. Buzz Williams got busted for recruiting violations at Marquette before Virginia Tech hired him. Buzz Williams got busted for recruiting violations at Texas A&M after he left Virginia Tech. So either he changed his ways at Virginia Tech or he just, did a better job of not getting caught. I don't. Buzz Williams could have gotten Virginia Tech put on probation, right? That was a risk worth taking because Virginia Tech had finished dead last 3 years in a row before he got here. Who cares if you get put on probation? You're not going to be any worse than dead last 3 years in a row, right?
Nobody gets put on probation anymore.
Exactly. But
they put you on probation, fire your coach, and then hire him back a couple years later, like Will Wade.
but he could have. Yeah. There could have been issues there, but it was a risk worth taking because Tech was a bad program.
Yeah, you were already in the cellar.
No, some other risks, like when you hire Mike Jones as your associate head coach to get access to those DMV players, and then he leaves after 2 years, and then you get nothing out of those 2 DMV players that you sign. That was a risk, but it's also a risk that I probably would have taken at the time. Like I was supportive of the hire. It just didn't work out. And then, recruiting Neo because of the reasons we outlined was a little bit of a risk, but it was a risk I also would have taken. So when you're a program like Virginia Tech and you're behind in tradition, budget, and now in payroll, like there are certain risks you have to take to try to get yourself over the hump. If you don't, you'll never get over the hump. Now, when you take those risks and it don't work, people are getting really mad, right? Like if Buzz Williams had gotten Tech in trouble, people would have gotten really
People
mad.
would have been like, why in the world did we hire this
Why
guy?
did we hire this guy? Right.
The writing was on the wall
Right.
when we, but
Right. So yeah, you got to take risks as a program, and now they've got to be calculated risks. And I don't have an issue with any of the risks that Tech has taken in basketball because I think they've all been calculated, and I think they were worth the risk. Now there are certain things you could do that maybe you don't see a high probability of success, and you do them anyway, and then I'd be against those, of course. But I think all the risks Tech has taken were calculated and the right decision. Some work out, some don't, and that one just didn't.
I think the most difficult part with Odalis is that they centered so much around him early, and he was such a big focal point as it had to be, and it got to a point where if Virginia Tech wanted to have any chance to make the postseason, it was not going to be sustainable for him to be the focal point because it got to points in games where he was not good enough to really keep on the floor at times.
But he just wasn't tough enough.
Well,
mentally, you had to go to games to really see this.
He's not a,
Long
but he's
stretches.
he's not a great defender, and teams went at him.
Well, they went at him, but even like from a mental standpoint, like you could see it in his face when he'd miss shots.
That's true.
If you're at a game, couldn't really see it if you're just watching television. But he was mentally the most fragile player I think Virginia Tech has had in a long, long time. Part of that is the pressure he puts on himself. Part of that is the expectations coming in.
Part of that's also just different culture.
Right, and you're not going to win. You're not going to win close games with mentally fragile players like that.
In hindsight, was the Providence performance like did that damage his future? It set expectations so high.
I got so many texts that day from people, including one who used to be like a fairly substantial basketball donor, and oh my God, Neo's first round, we're going to be really good this year, and I was just like, y'all need to calm down because the scouting report I got on him throughout the whole preseason was that he's an average shooter, a really good passer, not a great defender. And that was probably just a one-off as far as him making a bunch of shots.
And he was hitting like fadeaway threes, and those did not fall the rest of the season.
The rest of the season, exactly.
Like maybe put in his mind. And the national attention they got. I mean, national people were like, hey, Virginia Tech's got a guy, and it sort of framed the season as like, this could be special for Virginia Tech, and then they didn't live up to it.
I know a legitimate basketball scout that got to watch him the entire preseason with Virginia Tech, and who was just like, he's an average shooter, Chris. And I'm like, I believe you. And then that happened, and it's like you got to keep your mouth shut because you see the fan base so excited. You don't want to
be like, guys, this is not him,
and everything like that.
It's tough to be like, he's an average shooter. It's like, well, the shots went in, so what are we measuring here?
Yeah, right. It's tough to say, but you just sit back and wait for him to play back to the scouting report, and that's generally what happened.
Did he show enough skills from what you saw this year to think that someday he still could put it together and have a
absolutely.
big future?
Yeah, I mean, I think because of
size is still there.
Yeah, the size and his
vision,
his passing ability. I mean, you saw it. I think that was part of the difficult problem that the Hokies ran into is like he's such a good passer, and I think that made it at times really good to have him at point guard. You saw it, I think, early in the year when he was pretty healthy and Tech had its full complement of players, that he was running the pick and roll the right way, and he was making the right decisions and finding the right guys. And I think pro teams probably see that and go, he's got the skills, he's got the talent. If he can kind of refine his decision making a little bit, but he's also got to have the shooting. And he's not as bad of a shooter as he was in January when he was like 5 for 30 from three.
Remember, they weren't letting him actually work on his shot because he was so injured.
Yeah,
and they just wanted him to be healthy for games.
Yeah, I mean, I this is in the article I wrote of Dallas, and I broke down his splits through the first 13 games compared to the last 18 games. So we're talking like November 3rd through January 31st, which was the UVA game, and then after that. And he went from averaging 15, 5 assists a game and 4 rebounds a game and shooting 42% overall and 36 from 3 to 10 points, 4 assists, 2.5 rebounds. He was shooting 36 overall, which is what he was shooting from 3, and he went down to 28 from 3. It just like he really just regressed. And when he wasn't healthy, overcompensating, we talked about this part so much. It's just, and the lineups, so many different a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And it didn't work, and he dug himself into a hole a little bit. And it got to the point later in the year where your back's against the wall. They want to go win a game, and it's tough when the player probably paying the most amount of money is not on the bench. You're better with him off the floor. That just it kind of says a lot, and it's kind of disappointing. It got to that point, but and as Will was joking with us, now Avdalis is going to go somewhere, get paid a lot of money, and average like 18 and 10 a game, and go have a great career. That's what Will Stewart was joking with us.
We don't know if he's going to stay here or not. Like he might go back play pro ball and.
Well, that's the other part of it
overseas,
too. My guess is he'll go through NBA combine workouts and stuff in June, and that recruitment will drag out until June.
And I don't think anybody's going to save a substantial amount of money for him to make his decision this time.
Yeah,
I disagree.
You don't think so?
There's so much money out there, and you look at the size, you look at the vision, and every coach and every team is like, I can fix the shooting.
Oh yeah,
I can teach him how to
There's
shoot
going to be
it.
coaches say I can fix him.
Yeah.
Just like those NFL quarterback gurus, they're arrogant and they're like, yeah, I can turn Tim Tebow into an NFL quarterback.
You,
right?
you fall in love with the skills
Right.
and the profile, and I think when it comes to a competition and different schools going after this guy, I think he'll find a spot here.
Well, and I
Get
think
some money.
there are so many schools. Look at Illinois in the Final Four, and it's like an all Eastern European team between the Croatians and the Serbians and the Slovenians and Slovakians. And
There's a ton of good European players that come and play in college this year. It's just Virginia Tech got the one that was ranked number 2, and it didn't work.
but somebody's going to look at that and go, he's going to be great.
Right.
And we can mess with him. And I seriously wonder if Avdalis goes to a place like Illinois, where he's like the second or third option and does not have to, he doesn't have all this pressure of I've got to run the point, I've got to start the offense. It might be a little bit of a role decrease, but it might be better for him in his career.
Better for his development, for sure.
Well, Christian Gerdak is as well in the transfer portal for men's basketball. What do you react to that?
That's the disappointing one for me, because he and Mike Young always had a great relationship. Mike Young offered him a scholarship when he was in the 9th grade.
The youngest player Mike Young has ever offered.
Right, and you can't officially offer them until their junior years, but you can unofficially offer them before then, and Virginia Tech has been recruiting him for a long, long time. He played a lot as a freshman. A relationship with Young is good. He brought something unique to the team, the back to the basket post player. And I would say that there were 4 priorities to keep. Hammond, Hansberry, Johnson, and Gerdak. Now I would rank Gerdak probably 4th on that list, but there's 4 guys that you want to keep, and you're not worried too much about what the other guys do. And if you lose one of those 4 guys, it's a sign that you're probably not going to be particularly competitive in the market this year.
I mean, he was not like something special last year, but he is 6'10".
And he's a freshman.
260.
Most freshman post players don't have that kind of skill.
Right. Those are guys that are going to develop over time, and by the end of their careers, you're like, okay, this guy double-digit score or something like that. And I think he had that potential. You look at the way the game is going right now in the Final Four teams, a lot of it has been size, and that is how they've separated themselves from some of these smaller schools. You got to have size, and there's just not a lot of 6'10" human beings out there. And so if you have one here, it's probably not great to lose him in this situation. Again, I'm not saying like he's a double-digit scorer right now or anything like that, but a solid player and one you'd probably want to keep.
Yep.
The difficult part is the price to compete is always going to go up.
Yep.
And he is not a starter. He's basically your first player off the bench. If your goal is like making the NCAA tournament, he's really, really good, and he'd basically be, he's your 6th man. Mm-hmm. But what he would make as in that role here much less than he can make anywhere else. Like in terms of like, there are a lot of those top teams around the country that can offer him like double what he would get paid here.
Right. And, I look at it from the standpoint of, we've heard Tech is going to be about what they were last year from a payroll standpoint. And I read something online from one of the analytical guys.
I think it was, are you talking about the increase of
35% increase?
It was Evan Maya.
Right. So very, very early returns. Now, we know the portal hasn't officially opened yet, but the very, very early returns is 35% increase, right? That's what the price is going up this year for players, 35%. And if Virginia Tech's not increasing, that means they're going to, on paper, not be as good as they were or not be as talented as they were last year. And, I think it speaks to, the fundraising issues at Virginia Tech, which we've talked about for a long, long time. I went back and looked at those slides from the August BOV presentation last year. And they had $2 million allotted for Hokie Club stuff and for finding new revenue streams, just hiring new people to raise more money, right? And another $2 million allotted to increase NIL, like to hire personnel, whether it be at Tech or whether it be with, allotting that money to the Hokie Way and everything, which I know is separate, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They were going to allocate a lot of money to hire people to increase Virginia Tech's NIL efforts. That's been 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Where are those new hires?
When you don't have new revenue streams coming in,
right.
Somebody has to.
Like I wasn't expecting those things to happen overnight, but I would have expected something to happen by now when you say you're putting that much money into it.
Well, I think it all goes back to, I think you were talking about this earlier, Andy, just like they roll out this $229 million presentation and don't explain where the money's coming from.
Yeah, they still never really explained it. We've tried requesting just like they sort of the fundraising. Okay, that's just the blanket answer to
Who is going to raise the
that's
funds?
always the answer to everything. How are you going to get to that number?
We've seen one new Hokie Club one new Hokie Club employee hired, and that was a guy. The job listing was out there before the BOV. He was replacing someone who left last summer.
Yeah.
So it's not like added new members or anything like that. So we haven't seen any of that. It's been 8 months.
Yeah.
Also, just to say fundraising, it's well, why weren't you? If you could do it, why weren't you doing it before?
Right.
It feels like you are, getting quite a bit of what you can out of this fan base and this donor base. It is maybe pushing the limit to just up it by $20 million, whatever it is,
without making structural changes.
Right, but even with structural changes, I think there is a limit to giving from some of these fan bases, and I think some of these programs, and this is maybe where you'll see the elite sort of separate themselves, the Texases, the Alabamas, and the ones that are just fundraising machines. Not every school can fundraise like that. It is tough to keep up with that. And I wonder if eventually that you'll just hit your head against the ceiling of there's just no more to give. You can't come back to your fan base every single year and say, we need $40 million for this football roster. We need $10 million for this basketball roster. I just don't think those are numbers that you can keep up every single year. And maybe you see some of these teams just be like, we can't keep up. We can't keep up with the Joneses here.
Well, and the difficult part in men's basketball is, the teams who really want to compete are bumping their roster up a lot. And you see programs, Boston College, for example, was down in the cellar, just hired a new coach. There's going to be a new coach tax, meaning they're going to invest more money in this year. Mm-hmm. They hired Bill Murray's son, by the way, who was an assistant on Dan.
I mean, that by itself should be good for donations.
Sure.
It brings some attention to that program.
He hired Dan he was on assistant on Dan Hurley's staff at UConn. But there's going to be a new coach bump, because if you're going to get a new coach in, you have to promise them that there's going to be money coming in.
Well, BC already announced back in January or December that they're going to fully fund revenue sharing next year, which means they were not doing it this year, which is one of the reasons they were so terrible. So we already know, even if they don't have one single dollar in NIL money, they're at least going to be fully funded when revenue sharing.
What a concept.
On paper, they're going to be more competitive this year.
But the problem is that there are increases every year. And if everyone else in the league is increasing what they are putting into their roster every year and you are not.
Wake's not.
Wake's not.
BC doesn't care. They won the Bean Pot this year. That's all
Yeah,
that matters to
that's
them.
right.
The hockey
And
tournament.
they've got chowder. So
yeah, it's true.
But Wake, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Pitt. I mean, there are teams, and the California schools are like kind of in that boat. So much so that there were rumors that Mark Madsen was like looking at other jobs. Like the teams that are at the bottom of the league, if you will stay down there, the only way out is by putting more money in. And the difficult part is Gerdak. I think this is, just one small look behind the curtain a little bit, because such a good player. And I have fans in my mentions saying, well, maybe he's leaving because he realized Mike Young is a terrible coach. And it's like, Christian Gerdak has known Mike Young for at least 5 years. Mm-hmm. They've recruited, they've had that recruiting relationship for a really long time. And I can guarantee you that he just didn't flip on a dime and go, I don't want to play for this coach anymore. Right? And it's like, but when the money just isn't there, when you have to play money ball and you have to prioritize guys, and your fourth guy on the list is like, hey man, we can't really give you that, and somebody else can go, hey, I'll give you double for the same role, and we'll be on a Sweet 16 team. It's like you're getting priced out, and it's just a difficult, I think, look at the reality Virginia Tech men's basketball faces if it doesn't put more money into the program.
Yep. Well, let's close out the basketball talk by briefly discussing women's basketball. Kale Peterson hit the transfer portal as well.
I was not necessarily surprised at this one. Her role kind of decreased from last year this year. She was really, really, both her and Gerdak too. Gerdak was a great interview, great person to be around. I'm sure anybody who had an opportunity to talk to both of them, just like great representations of Virginia Tech. Kale, she followed Megan Duffy from Marquette as a commit to Virginia Tech. Part of that first recruiting class with Layla Wells, and she played a lot last year backing up Rose Mishaw. Tech didn't have a lot of size, and then Tech brought in more size in the offseason, and she kind of saw her role decrease a little bit, and honestly split minutes with Anaya Trent, true freshman center, and Peterson's skill set's a little bit weird because she's like 6'1", 6'1". She's like undersized to kind of be like a 5, but she's not like quick enough necessarily to be a 3. And she can step out and hit threes on occasion and stretch the floor. And she hit a 3 against Oregon in the NCAA tournament, but her game is kind of like a middle ground, if that makes sense. And I think this is writing on the wall a little bit. If she wants a bigger role, Tech is bringing in another 6'4" post player, high school Ariana Harris-Mott from, Boo Williams kid from Maryland in the offseason. And you need a little bit more size. And I think this is a little bit of, hey, if you want a bigger role, you're probably going to have to go find it somewhere else because, we got Anaya Trent. We're probably going to go out and get an experience big in the portal. There's just not really going to be a position there for you. So not necessarily surprising. Maybe I'm a little bit surprised at this point that we haven't had 1 or 2 other players enter the portal just because that's usually how the numbers go, but they're also still about a week until the portal opens. So we'll see where that goes. And both rosters have plenty of openings right now in terms of scholarships.
Yeah, and for those wondering about Diamond Sports, baseball fell in a series to Stanford, did pick up a game in game number 2. They picked up a win. They also beat Radford, and softball kept the dominance rolling as they outscored Boston College 42-7 over the 3 games.
But they split the doubleheader. Did you read that line
Boston
in Boston College's
website.
recap? Mm-hmm.
So softball continues to roll, and as we talk about what's rolling, what's coming up next at techsideline.com?
Andy, you've got a mailbag this week?
Hopefully get some more questions that are not just like
NIL
financial related. Like
Yeah.
there's actual stuff to talk about on the
Yeah,
fields. Let's get to
absolutely.
that.
I'm going to write an article on linebackers. Just general thoughts, a few quotes from Pry yesterday, and then I'll have my normal Q&A. Might do an Inside the Numbers if I can find something to write about.
We'll see. I mean, we'll see what the basketball portal churns out, and might not be the end of portal entries on the men's side. Yeah, it feels weird that like we're halfway through spring ball, but that's the truth, and spring game will be here before we know it.
I'm looking at the forecast, man. 3 days before the spring game, the early forecast is 69 degrees. Just hang on for 3 more days of good weather.
I don't trust it.
I don't trust it either.
Yeah, we're recording Talking with Teal right after this, and it'll be posted tomorrow. So we got that to look forward to. Not to steal Nick's thunder.
So that's on techsideline.com, and let's hear what else will be on the audio video schedule, Nick.
I'm just kidding, David. Just giving you a hard time. Yeah, talk with Teal later today, and then Friday Q&A Friday. That's it. Yeah, more football. Just keeps rolling on.
Yeah. I might go check out some softball this weekend.
Yeah, good weather for it.
Supposed to be good weather.
Yep, Clemson.
And it's a Thursday through Saturday series because of Easter on Sunday.
Oh, and by the way, so I was at the Tech Stanford baseball game on Sunday, and I was talking to somebody there. I was like, I always wanted to kind of go to Fenway Park. It's on the bucket list. Tech's playing in Fenway Park in 2 weeks against Boston College, so I just randomly decided to book myself a trip to Boston and go see Virginia Tech play in Fenway Park. That's going to be an interesting
So you got some
experience.
monster seats. You're gonna sit up there.
You got general admission. I can sit
Okay.
anywhere I want.
Oh,
I might
nice.
go sit up with Evan Hughes and keep him company.
I've never been to Fenway, but Evan always raves about it, and now he's really excited
It's
to go
worth it.
back.
I've been there 4 or 5 times.
I've heard
for
they got
games.
this cool bar in the
Yeah.
outfield where you're basically right on the warning track. It's right under center field. Yeah.
I don't know if
I
I've
don't
been
know
to
if they'll
that.
open that
I
for a
like
college
stood
game.
up in the Budweiser section in the upper right field corner. Like I stood for an entire game over there. I think they were playing the Phillies or something like that. So I've seen a couple back to back, and went up there and saw the Twins kick it around and play terribly one time. But it's definitely. I mean, you go in there and you're like, this place is old, and it feels old when you're walking around the concourses. But then get out there on the field, and you're just like,
That's the beauty of
It's
it.
so cool to get out there and see it, and they don't have all these like quirks that the modern stadiums have that are put in there intentionally. It's like they have a big wall in left because there was a street there, and that's why they had to have a big wall in left. Is it's not designed that way specifically just to have a cool big wall in left field.
Well, and this will be the second major league stadium Tech's played in this year because they played at the Rangers Stadium already this year too.
Yeah.
Hopefully, Hokies fare a little bit better this time.
Yeah, so try to keep up with what we have at Tech Sideline, and maybe go ahead and catch a ball game sometime soon as well. But thank you for watching this episode of the Tech Sideline podcast number 479. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and refer the show to a friend if you haven't already. For Chris Coleman, David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, and Nick Brown behind the scenes, I'm Riley Klaus saying so long for now.